from humble beginnings, Dr. Hayes always had a passion for public service. From his early experience as a peer elected student representative in the 1994 Louisiana Boys State Program to his work as a congressional intern with the Honorable Jim Cooper, Dr. Hayes has instilled in him early that servant leadership is for the American people, especially for the disenfranchised, and you serve as their voice. Servant leadership continued to be the mantra for Dr. Hayes during his medical school training and early career. Whether at Meharry Medical College, Baylor College of Medicine, or with the National Health Service Corporation, this young doctor cherished the opportunity to provide compassionate care to the most underserved communities in the nation. With these experiences, Dr. Hayes learned how compassionate healthcare can translate into public service and how both are vehicles for community representation. Recently, Dr. Hayes was the Democratic nominee and candidate for the state representative in Georgia, House District 49 in North Fulton. His four major platform issues focused on the following. Number one, health care, in particular Georgia Medicaid expansion. Number two, education with an emphasis on restoring funding to teacher salaries and the Hope Scholarship. Three, small business advocacy by emphasizing tax breaks and funding for small businesses. And four, improving transportation in North Fulton and throughout the Atlanta metro. As a political newcomer, Dr. Hayes has made waves in the new battleground state of Georgia. Although his bid to become state representative of Georgia, House District 49, fell short by the narrowest of margins, Dr. Hayes will continue to provide public service to his community and future constituents. He will continue to fight for the betterment of not a few, but for all people, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, disability, or socioeconomic status. Please help me welcome my guest, Dr. Jason T. Hayes.
Hello, hello. Hey, I'm doing fine. I appreciate you, Ms. Carmen, having me on the show. This is truly an honor. I'm definitely excited to, chop it up with you.
Yes, yes, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. I'm very happy to have you on the show too. I follow you on Facebook and Instagram, and
Wow.
you have always been someone that I was very intrigued with. I
Wow.
remember.
Well,
And
thank you.
you are very welcome. I was first drawn to you because I saw that you were running for your congressional seat in Atlanta. So that is how I first came to know who you are. And so then found out that you were a doctor and just was really impressed with your service and your community. And then what really made me want to talk to you was that you started sharing your experience about getting the COVID vaccine.
Yeah.
And so that was prompted me to reach out to you and ask you to come on to the show just to talk a little bit more about that and then, of course, your experiences. So if you could start off by telling our listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So, one thing about myself, my name is Dr. Jason Hayes. I'm a board certified internal medicine doctor. A lot of people, I tell them I'm from South Louisiana. My family actually moved to New Jersey. So I was actually born up north, but then my family moved back. So I grew up in a town in the South called Opelousas, and we call that the yam capital of the world. So people want to
Yam
know
capital.
yeah, that's our claim to fame, the yam capital. So we
Okay.
always have this yam festival in October. So if you ever want to get some good yams, you come to Opelousas, Louisiana. We'll get you taken care of.
Okay.
So essentially, you finished high school, Opelousas High School in 1995. Then went to Xavier University in New Orleans. Finished that December of '98 with a Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry. In addition, I went to Meharry Medical College and did medical school studies, public health studies, and finished in 2004. And then from there, I went to Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, did my training in internal medicine, became board certified. And then from there, I started my career. I actually worked as a public health doctor with the National Health Service Corps. So I worked in Jackson, Tennessee, Memphis, and also in Nashville. And I worked in some disenfranchised communities and
Hmm.
had a great time taking care of some great patients. And then after I fulfilled my commitment after 4 years, then I did some work as a travel doctor. And then I came to Atlanta in 2014, 2015 with a local hospital system. And then from there, decided to go back and get another degree,
Okay.
which is an MBA with Haslam College of Business at the University of Tennessee. And then after that, decided to start my own practice, and definitely I'm enjoying it. And then you've heard that I did run for office. I was the
Yes.
former Democratic nominee for Georgia House District 49. And again, we only lost by a short margin, but we're looking forward to running again. And we have a great fan base. So we're looking forward to having a great time in 2 years.
Wow, that's an amazing story. So, did you know you always wanted to be a doctor? So, what made you want to pursue medicine?
That's a great question. So my mother, she's a nurse, and I always saw her getting up, going to work, and then had some family members who were sick. So my mom, she always, made sure that they were taken care of, whether it's bringing them to the doctor where she worked at or actually giving them medication. So I
Okay.
would say early on, I was influenced by my mother. Then also her boss, I was able to shadow him when I was in college, and got some early experiences as a physician. But I would say when I was 13 years old, I, got on my knees and I prayed to God, and, I was doing well in school, and I knew I wanted to help people. So decided to go ahead and make that decision to become a doctor at that age.
Wow, at 13.
Yes, absolutely.
So, what is the best part of being a doctor?
The best part, two things. One is talking to patients. I mean, I really love having a great interaction with them. And, as much as patients say, hey, I want a doctor that I can talk to and is a friend, I'm actually the same way too. I actually like to have patients that I can really interact with, because the visit doesn't just become about, hey, I'm here for blood pressure and diabetes. You actually get to know the person. I mean, we even have small talk about what's going on with world events or what's going on with our family. So I really enjoy that aspect about being a doctor. And then the second aspect that I like is that I like figuring stuff out. So, and as an internist, we're adult doctors, but we also like to, figure out the pieces to the puzzle. So if I have a patient with a case that no one else figures out, they don't know what to do. I mean, I actually love those cases. I mean, literally, I'll sit down, I'll think about it, I'll do research, and use a lot of evidence-based medicine to get down to the root cause of the problem. So those would be my two biggest things that I really like about being a doctor.
Okay. So, yeah, so you like figuring things out. So, you like it
Absolutely,
when
it's
things
fun. It's fun. It's a challenge. It's a
I can see
challenge.
that. I can see that. So, what is the most challenging part of being a doctor?
Oh wow, I would say a couple things. One, dealing with stereotypes. I mean, people think when you're a doctor, A, that you're uber rich, and then B, that you're super nerdy. And then, so I'm telling everybody, look, I'm not uber rich, and number two, I'm definitely not super nerdy. Even though if you call me a
What's
nerd,
wrong with nerdy?
I'll
I'm
take it.
nerdy.
I'll take it. I'll take it. But no, I would say those are. I wouldn't say challenging, but those are some interesting things. But to kind of answer your question, what are the challenging things? As a small business owner, running my own practice, I think one of the challenging things is being able to see patients, keep your patient flow, getting productivity for your business to keep it going. And one of the things that I always tell doctors is that when you run a practice, you have to look at it as a business. So you have to make good decisions as far as taking care of your patients, but you also have to make good decisions for your business.
Is
So
that
one
why
of
you
the
went
things from
back to
my,
school to
yes,
be a
and that
trainer?
actually, to be honest, it gave me the technical skills, but also gave me the confidence. So if
Mm.
there's any situation with my business that's not working, I can literally look at the numbers, look at the financial statements, and make a decision. And then also get with my accountant and talk about what we can do to make things better. So to be honest, I actually enjoy that challenge as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I find it, when you were reading or you were talking about, going back and getting your MBA, and then you were like,
Yeah.
and then I opened my business. I'm like,
Yes.
aha. I'm like, okay, he realized that, yeah, where I may have the skills and the knowledge being a doctor, but running a business, you know, two different things. And so you wanted to make
Yeah.
sure that you had the education and to back that up and to put yourself in the best position with your business.
Absolutely. And then even with business school, I mean, they teach you, theory, but even you have to go through certain experiences with your business or any business venture that you do.
Hmm.
And then you'll say, oh, they didn't teach us this in school, but hey, this
Yep.
is the experience and all that. So you take it and learn from it, and move forward, and try to become better. So, I mean, if you can get the technical skills, that's great. If you can't, experience is there. Then, we always encourage other small business owners to get with, like here in Atlanta, there's the Atlanta Black Business Chambers,
Okay.
also your local Chamber of Commerce. There's always programs where they're bring in small business owners or accountants or marketers where you can sit there and actually, register for these classes and actually learn some good business.
That's great. That's great. So it's 2021, and we
Uh-oh.
know what 2020 was. Um, it's crazy that I say that because I'm like 2020, and now we're 2021, and we're actually almost coming up on the year that
Yeah.
for America.
Oh
It
man.
was the week of March 16th or 17th that we actually started our shutdown, even though we
Oh my
know the
God.
virus was around much earlier than that. But nevertheless, we're
Oh
coming
my
up on,
God.
you know?
I was watching a basketball game,
Uh huh.
and the Utah Jazz was playing somebody, and
I
then they said,
remember
"Oh, Rudy
Rudy.
Gobert, he's being tested for COVID."
Yes.
And
That's
then
when I
next
knew
thing
it
you
was
know,
real.
yeah, they just shut everything down. And I did like this. I said, "Oh man, this is real."
I know exactly what you're talking about because I think it was either the week or the week before. So if you didn't know, you will know now. I am the number one greatest and best LeBron James fan.
Okay,
So yes,
okay,
all right.
all right. I like
Yeah,
LB. Look, I follow this guy. I mean, from Cleveland, Miami, back to Cleveland and the Lakers, and
same.
I mean, look, the guy. He just reminds me of like Magic, and just
Yeah,
kind of how he is
yeah.
with the game. And that guy is
He
pretty
play all
cool, man. I remember
positions.
he's pretty cool. When I was living in Memphis and working out there, I mean, he came, obviously would come to the games and stuff. And the guy, I saw him waving at people in the crowd, like even with like he was a regular person.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy's really humble, man. I really respect that guy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I like him for all those reasons too, and so I'm a big fan. Anyway, he
Okay.
was coming to Charlotte. The Lakers were coming to play the Hornets, and I
Oh,
had tickets to go to that game, and so I was so excited. I was so ready. And then when I found out that like you said, Rudy, contracted the virus, and then next thing you know, the NBA is like, okay, pause, delay. I'm like, you know,
what's
what?
up? Yeah,
Like the king was about to come to the queen
he
city.
was
Like what
coming.
what what
He
what
was
are we
coming.
what's happening here? But that's
And
when I was like, whoa, this is for the NBA to shut down or to pause. This
yeah,
thing is really really
it's huge.
it's something that's huge. So anyway, so we know that it came, and we know what we've experienced over this last year. You know, the thing that I think is most, I don't know if we can say it's surprising, but it is the most alarming is the way that this virus has impacted ethnic minorities.
Yes.
It has impacted them disproportionately compared to other populations. So why is it that this virus has impacted or affected minorities?
Yeah, it's a great question. Tremendous question. One of the first thing that I learned at Meharry Medical College in Nashville, Tennessee, we focused a lot on healthcare disparities, did research. So when I first heard of this word healthcare disparities, I was like, okay, what exactly does that mean? But then as we learned in medical school, and even for myself, when I did my work as a public health doctor with the National Health Service Corps, you learn that many minorities, especially Black people, were treated differently in the healthcare system. Not only treated differently, but we're treated differently because of our socioeconomic status. We're treated differently by the color of our skin. So for me, I looked at it as racism in healthcare. And so when those things happen and you're a certain socioeconomic status, or hey, you're a certain race, whether if you're Black or Latino, you find out when you go into the healthcare system that maybe your pain isn't treated like other patients, or maybe your blood pressure or diabetes or your heart disease isn't treated like other races.
Yeah,
Even Serena Williams, I mean, when she had her first baby,
that's right.
she
Venus.
was in the postpartum ward and kept telling them, hey, my chest hurts, my chest hurts.
Yes.
The nurses were like, oh, you're fine, you're fine. Until she basically like either begged them or something, or basically told them, look, my chest is hurting. Come to find out she had a pulmonary embolus and,
That's right.
blood clot in the lungs, and she could have died. So what COVID-19 did was essentially highlight a lot of those inequities in healthcare.
Hmm.
So if you're someone that has high blood pressure, diabetes, and you haven't been to a doctor in 10 years, well, by the time you go to the doctor or go to the emergency room, the blood sugar is 400. And I say 400 normal blood sugar is 80 to 120. So if it's in the 400 range, you're looking at your kidneys shutting down,
Yes.
possible heart attack, dehydration. Sometimes you have cuts that don't heal. Well, if you already have that going on, and then COVID-19 coming on board, you're dealing with a viral infection, and diabetes is a disease that actually weakens your immune system. Then you're someone that'll show up to the emergency room sicker than maybe a 22-year-old that is in perfect health.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's something that we definitely are looking at, and it's not just diabetics, but it's patients with asthma or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease that might be brought on by smoking.
And is that
So
because the coronavirus is a respiratory type, I guess, virus that attacks your respiratory virus? So people with asthma or any other type of respiratory illness would be more susceptible.
yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, those patients are more susceptible, or even patients with any kind of cardiovascular risk, like high blood pressure, diabetes as well. So if you're, dealing with these chronic diseases that are already making your body weak,
Yeah.
and even your immune system weak or your respiratory system weak, then a virus will just make things worse. And then when they're pulling up the data from the public health department and the CDC, and they cross-check this data, then they're finding out a lot of patients, they're finding out what their race is, they're finding out what their socioeconomic status is, and then they're finding out whether if you had a PCP, which is a primary care physician. And then, these public health facilities, they take these, we call them variables, and they put them into the studies, and then they come out and say, well, hey, these patients with COVID-19, we're realizing that most of them are Black, and most of them have chronic diseases, and
Yeah.
most of them haven't had a primary care doctor. So then when that happens, it highlights the nature of healthcare disparities.
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
Yeah. So although people of color are contracting and dying of COVID-19 at disproportionate and alarming rates, um, they are the least amount
Yeah.
of individuals who are getting the vaccines. Why is
Yeah.
this?
Honestly, I was just talking to a friend yesterday, and distrust in the healthcare system. I mean,
Yeah.
people, we're intuitive. So when we go to a place that isn't welcoming to us, you feel it. You feel racism. You
Mm-hmm.
see it. You hear it actually, and you combine that with historical data. I mean, we can go back as far as to 1800s during slavery.
Mm-hmm.
There was this doctor named Dr. Sims, and they call him the father of gynecology. Well, this guy used to subject women, Black women, Black slave women, to horrible gynecology procedures.
Yeah.
And they're calling this guy the father of gynecology. I mean, that's, ludicrous. And then you look at things like the Tuskegee experiment, where in the 50s, the United States Public Health Service, which is the forerunner to the Department of Health and Human Services and the Centers for Disease Control, they went down to Tuskegee, Alabama, and told, Black men, you have bad blood. And this was in the 50s. So they
Mm-hmm.
so-called drew the blood and, gave them these shots or whatever. And then come to find out, men were dying. They were developing, disfigured noses. They were developing brain infections from syphilis. They were developing heart infections, and they were dying. And then when this information was brought to the United States of America, including the Centers for Disease Control, they dismissed it. They dismissed us, they dismissed our people. So it actually took an act of Congress in the 70s to force them to not only stop these trials, but to give the patients who were still alive treatment, but also compensation that needed to be.
I think we froze.
Hello, we're back.
Okay, hold on. You're there. We go. Okay, we're cool. You said it's okay. I can edit it out. I think you left off at the Congress piece.
Yes. So when you're dealing with an organization, and I hate to say it, but the United States of America, that actually it took an act of Congress to stop this type of atrocity.
Yeah.
That's terrible. And then, those aren't isolated incidences. There are incidences where there's been forced sterilization among Black women and Latino women, Native American women as well. Young ladies going in thinking they're getting their appendix taken out. They have the whole uterus taken out. Are
Wow.
their tubes tied? Things of that nature. So for a lot of us, trusting the healthcare system is difficult. And then what's even more difficult is that we do have a lot of healthcare agencies, a lot of doctors, nurses telling everyone, go get the vaccine, go get the vaccine. But if you're not giving context to the situation and not saying, hey, there are risks and benefits to the vaccine, and if you're not acknowledging the healthcare atrocities that were against Black people or Latinos or Native Americans, then all you're doing is facilitating more distrust.
Right.
So it's a very difficult situation, very difficult, very difficult.
Absolutely. And so when I hear people talk about it, I mean, even myself at the beginning, I was kind of like, nah, I don't know
Yeah.
if I'm going to do this. I don't know if I'm going to get this vaccine. And it wasn't because of anything that I've personally experienced with healthcare, but because of those stories and the history, and I'm being aware of it. However, I get my children, my daughters were
Yeah.
vaccinated in order to go to
Yeah.
school and things like that. So there is a part of me, and I would say most other people that believe that vaccines in and of itself is safe and healthy,
Hmm.
but for whatever reason, we're not, as a majority of a collective in the Black community, trusting this vaccine. So what we know about this vaccine is that it came pretty quick in terms of
Yes.
how vaccines typically come. And so, even though I don't know the exact process and the
Yeah.
different phases that they go through,
Hmm.
we do know that this one came faster. So, with that being said, it came faster. How can we be safe, or how can we be sure that it's safe and that it's effective and that there were no shortcuts in this process?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a difficult question to answer. I mean, even I had to sit down and do some research, and what I found out was that they did a lot of preclinical studies, like gathering data, using a lot of historical comparative data. And while they were doing that, they started the phase 1 trials at the same time.
Okay.
As far as gathering human subjects, animal subjects as well, and I say subjects but participants, and they actually ran the animal trials with the human trials at the same time. So, the question is, did they skip a step? That's debatable. Maybe. Those are the best things I could say about that.
Hmm.
But during this time, United States of America, under the Department of Health and Human Services, they had to grant this emergency authority to get these vaccines going. And I mean, even the private sector, I should say, talking about Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson and Johnson. I mean, they focused a lot of their resources towards getting this vaccine going. Even a lot of academic centers, including places like Meharry Medical College, Vanderbilt, Emory, I mean, they focused a lot of their resources towards figuring out what this virus is and even working on a vaccine that can help people. And, they got the vaccine out, found out that Pfizer is 95% effective, Moderna 94% effective, and then to date, the Johnson and Johnson, which is a one-shot vaccine, is 85% effective. So, even though you would want for things to be 100%, there are always going to be some failure with certain things. So,
Sure.
and also side effects as well with vaccines that we also have to be on the lookout for. So I always tell patients that, do your research on the vaccines, look at your clinical situation, and then have a conversation with your doctor about whether the vaccine is for you.
And so, what is a vaccine exactly?
Oh, wow, that's a really good question. So a vaccine, the best way to kind of explain it is, like in this case, we have a viral pandemic, a virus that's out. So what a vaccine is it's a way to boost your immune system against this particular virus or even bacteria. So in the case of the COVID-19 vaccine, it's an mRNA vaccine, which is basically an RNA is a single-stranded piece of material, genetic material, and basically the M means messenger. So when you get the injection, it goes into your body and it goes into your cells, and then in your cells, if you kind of look at it like this as a circle,
Hmm.
this is the cellular membrane. On the inside is a nucleus. So just think of the space between the nucleus and the cellular membrane as is the cytoplasm. So when the mRNA vaccine goes in, it has a message, and then the message is read by enzymes in the cytoplasm, and it's read using DNA,
Mhm.
but it does not go with the DNA. So people always think, oh, it's going to combine with our DNA. Well, it doesn't do that, but it's read with all these enzymes, and enzymes are proteins that are used to do reactions. So essentially the mRNA is read, and it tells the body, we need you to make this spiked protein, which is very similar to the COVID-19 virus. So your body makes this spiked protein, and then this mRNA gets disintegrated in the cytoplasm. So the body makes this spiked protein, and then when it happens, the rest of your body, the immune system, recognizes it as foreign. So when it recognizes it as foreign, they have these different, it's a good way to say this, different parts of the immune system that sees it, recognize it, tags it, and then tells the body to attack it. And then when the body attacks it, you start to develop symptoms like a fever. You start to develop things like chills, and you just start feeling awful. But that's your body's immune response to a foreign substance or the virus or the vaccine per se.
That's
And
that's
then,
that's very good to note that you
yeah,
start experiencing some of the symptoms that you
yeah,
would have if you actually contracted the disease. And
absolutely.
and that's your body's way of letting you know, or that's letting you know that the vaccine is actually working.
It's working. It is working. Absolutely. So when that happens, your body develops a primary immune response, and you do develop some antibodies from that.
Okay.
But then after, and that's about like days 1 to 5, 1 to 6. Then about days 7, 5 to 7 or so, you start developing secondary antibodies. Memory B cells help to secrete out these antibodies. And the antibodies, the memory antibodies, we call them IgGs, from
Hmm.
again days 5 to 7 to about 14. And then once you have those, then your body, then you have immunity. So let's say a month later you get exposed to the COVID-19 virus or variant or mutant, and it comes into your body, then your immune system says, oh, wait, oh, we know who you are now. Let's go ahead and neutralize you. So then those antibodies come in, and it neutralizes that virus, and then the virus ends up dying. And one thing I tell people about a virus is a virus needs a host, which is us,
Hmm.
our host cells, to survive and replicate. And viruses' whole main part of being around is to come in and to replicate. And just like any species, its goal in life is to survive and to replicate. So if you don't give the virus an opportunity to replicate, it'll die.
It'll die. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. It's I remember that in my eighth grade biology class.
Oh, really?
Yeah, eighth grade.
Yeah.
About the yeah, the antibodies and the virus being a host, and so one of the things that I think people kind of confuse is that the vaccine is not a cure.
Right. Right.
So can you explain the differences between what, why a virus can't be cured, or why people confuse, viruses being cured?
Yeah, but well, that's a good question. Viruses can be killed, but one of the big ways to cure a virus is what you're dealing with is survival of the fittest, natural selection. So, again, if the virus doesn't have an opportunity to replicate, if it doesn't have a host, it'll eventually die out. Now, when you're dealing with the pharmaceutical industry, they are making medications that can actually effectively stop the replication process of the virus and eventually kill it. So it's an interesting thing, but the question comes in again, the herd immunity, versus medications, and then some people think, well, hey, we just get around other people that have the virus. But the thing is about this particular virus is that once you get it, and let's say you survive a COVID-19 infection, those antibodies are only in your system for about 90 days. So
Hmm.
then once that happens, then you're basically subjected to the COVID-19 vaccine again. I mean, excuse me, virus again. So you're vulnerable. So, and that's even with the vaccine. When you get the vaccine, studies that I looked up in Europe, from Europe, it said you'll only have the antibodies from 3 to 7 months. So, I mean, when you start going over 6 months, I mean, those antibodies start to go away.
Start to go
So then
away.
the question comes up again is that, well, doc, if that's the case and I get this vaccine, do I have to get it again? And unfortunately, what I tell everyone is yes, you'll likely have to get this vaccine again. It'll be treated just like the flu,
The flu.
be likely a seasonal thing. So I hate to say it, but COVID-19 is going to be here. I'm not going to say the long term, but definitely for the short term.
Yeah, no, that's good information to share,
Yeah.
for people to understand that this is going to be something that we are going to have to learn how to live with safely, and to to have more information on. So you took the vaccine. How was your
Yes.
experience? What was your
My
experience like?
experience. Yeah, it was interesting. I've had vaccines before, flu vaccine, and one time, I would say 15 years ago, I had the flu shot when I was in training, and actually experienced those symptoms people talked about, chills and a fever. So since that time, I hadn't had any issues, and I've had tetanus. I've had pneumovax, which is a pneumonia vaccine. So this one, I really didn't think anything was going to happen. So got the vaccine, and then when you get it, your arm is kind of hurting a little bit. So I would say within 5 minutes, I started noticing my lips were tingling. And then
Wow,
at first, I was
five
like,
minutes.
yeah, and I said, okay, I think this is just a mask rubbing up against my lips. Well, my lips started getting heavy, and I said, oh. So they're watching me. They're watching all the
Yeah,
patients. So I said, oh man. So they ask anybody having symptoms. So I raised my hand. They said, Doc, what's going on?
that
I said, my lips.
fast.
Yeah, within about 5 minutes. So then they were like, well, Doc, how come you didn't tell us earlier? I said, well, I thought it was in my head.
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
was like, oh, you should have told us. So they're checking my vitals. They're watching me. And then, I'm looking at myself on my phone or whatever, taking pictures to see if my lips were swollen because they really felt heavy.
Oh, wow.
So I thought I was having an allergic reaction. And all I did was this to my neck just to take a deep breath, just to make sure I wasn't having any issues. And the
Sure.
nurses were like, "Oh my God, we're taking you to the ER." I said, "No, no, no." I said, "I'm fine." But so it was an interesting experience. They watched me for an hour. When I got home, I took some Claritin, as preventive purposes, and Claritin's an antihistamine, very
Okay.
similar to Benadryl.
Hmm.
So right there, I was like, man, I said, well, why did this happen? So did some research, and I got the Pfizer vaccine, and this was the first dose, and found out that there were a subset of patients who actually developed some lip tingling.
Okay.
So for Pfizer, it's 21 days later that you need to get your second shot.
Hmm.
So I would say 20 minutes before, 30 minutes before I got that shot, I said, you know what? I said, I'm going to do something. I'm going to prophylax. So I went ahead and took a Claritin, which is an antihistamine. I took a Pepsid. Believe it or not, people know it as a heartburn medicine, but it's an antihistamine. And I took an ibuprofen. Now, I was thinking about my immediate protection. When you do the research, it says don't take ibuprofen, don't take Tylenol before the vaccine because it can blunt your immune response and decrease your antibody response. Well, I made a decision, a professional and personal decision to prophylax because I didn't know if this was an allergic reaction. I didn't, know what was going on. So I just wanted to make sure I didn't have, an inflammatory response or a large inflammatory response to the vaccine. So got the second vaccine. The lip tingling came for a few seconds and went away. And then I was fine for that day. But then the next day I developed some fatigue, developed some sore throat. I felt weak. And then at first I was like, oh, this is in my head. This can't be anything. I'm fine. I'm fine. But then I stopped and thought, I said, okay, dude, you really are having an immune reaction to the vaccine. So I knew it was working.
Okay.
So waited a little bit. Then I took some ibuprofen, was fine. And then I would say in the third day, my stomach started killing me. And I was like, I
Wow.
said, man, what is wrong with me? So I said, oh, I ate some bad food the night before. But I just kept, excuse my French, kept going to the bathroom. And I said, man, I stopped and I thought, I said, wait a minute, wait a minute. I said, it's the vaccine. And then come to find out, the vaccine actually does this at about 72 hours. You do get some GI upset. So I said, okay,
Okay.
I know the vaccine is working. So, and I wanted to document it on Facebook, Instagram, and just to let people know what my experiences was. And I tell other healthcare providers and nurses and doctors, I say, look, modeling is good, especially for many of us who we're a little weary about the vaccine. And even one of my friends was like, why did you do it? Why'd you do it? And I said, well, look, I said, I knew what I was doing. I understood what I was doing. So if I was the sacrificial lamb, then I'm okay with it.
No, I mean, that definitely helped me when I saw you post about your experience. I'm like, okay, he's a doctor. He's
Yeah.
well aware,
Yes.
of what the vaccine is and what it isn't, and he's sharing his experience, and he's
Yeah.
telling us exactly what he's going through. And you're not sugarcoating it. You're not.
Yeah.
You didn't make it sweet or at all. You gave
Yeah.
exactly what you just told us to
Yeah.
share is what you shared, and that was very, very helpful, and it was
Oh,
very
yeah.
powerful because I'm sure you helped a lot of people, make the best decision that is best for them, and coming
Absolutely.
from a reputable source, because
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that we're kind of fighting against, within our Black community, is all the myths and the different, things that are coming out of that are not scientific, that are not proven
Yeah.
by science. And so to be
Yeah.
able to see to be able to see a doctor,
Yeah.
post information based upon not only your experience but also your medical experience, I think that helped a lot of people in, helping them come up with a decision on
Absolutely.
what they're deciding to do with the virus. I mean, with the vaccine.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
so with ethnic minorities being disproportionately affected by COVID, there have been
Yeah.
talks about, getting that vaccine to them first and fast because
Yes.
they're the ones that are hurting. And so there's debate about that, right?
Right.
Because there are a lot of other people who need it as well. So do you think it's lawful or even ethical to prioritize, minorities with the vaccine?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say it's unlawful, but in terms of ethics, I take it a step further. I think it's unethical if you don't tell patients the risk and the benefits of the vaccine. I think it's unethical if you don't acknowledge the past or the human rights atrocities that we had. And then I also think it's unethical if you make the vaccine available for patients in their neighborhood, but then someone is coming from a whole another city, a whole another county, and maybe they come from a higher socioeconomic status and they end up getting the vaccine before my grandmother gets it, or my cousin or my brother or something like that. And that's what bothers me. So I think that it's kind of looking at the solution of this situation. And I was speaking to someone about it. As I said, I think they should have assigned these vaccines based upon zip code or using geocoding. And I say geocoding, that's basically using the census tract,
Hmm.
or the census actually, and then determining how many people you have in your particular zip code, and then having those vaccines available for people that live there. And then, showing your bill where you live or your driver's license or something like that. And I think when we do that, things become equitable for everyone as opposed to having this 45-year-old or 30-year-old who in perfectly good health and just wants a vaccine because they want to go cross country or something like that,
Yeah.
and not to be stereotypical or anything like that, but I'm hearing these stories of people not living in certain areas going in and getting the vaccine and
Yeah.
taking it away from those who actually want it or those who actually need it.
Need it. Yeah.
So I think I would say, is it unethical to prioritize minorities? I think that's, again, kind of hard to say, but I think, again, we need to acknowledge the risk, the healthcare disparities, and we need to acknowledge, again, past atrocities, and then ask patients to make an educated decision after having a discussion with, doing research and then discussing with
Yeah.
their doctor.
Yeah. What
Mhm.
can we do to help those, within the, Black community, minority community, who are afraid or who are misinformed, just to help inform them on whatever decision they will or will not make? But how can we help them feel better about making their decision if they choose to get the vaccine?
Absolutely. Well, what we're doing now, you and I speaking about it, I think
Hmm.
this helps our people in the minority communities, Latino communities, Black communities, more doctors, more nurses, individuals, judges, lawyers, individuals who understand the law. individuals who work in healthcare documenting their experiences and say, hey, look, I know about Tuskegee experiment. I know about some of these human rights violations. I'm a medical person. I'm a doctor. I've done research. I know what I'm dealing with. Documenting this and showing people. So we call that model. And again, when we do this, it helps encourage other people. And again, I always, stress this even with my own patients when I'm talking to them about getting a vaccine or getting a medication, encourage them, do the research. And when you explain to someone, hey, do the research, I'm not pressuring you. You are the captain of your own ship and you have every right to make a decision. When you give people the opportunity to make a decision for themselves, and when they do make that decision, they become comfortable with it. And if they don't make the decision, well, that doesn't mean that they won't get the vaccine later on. Maybe they're waiting on family members or friends or other people to get the vaccine. Like one of my friends told me last night, she said she was waiting on more data. And that's actually a totally educated decision, especially in medicine when we're talking about evidence-based medicine. Hey, if there's not enough data and you want to wait, that's fine. But well, I tell patients that whether if you get the vaccine or not, still need to wear your mask, still need to wash your hands 20 seconds with lukewarm to warm water, good lather as well, dry them. Also, you want to social distance and make sure that you're not in an area where there are 10 or more people. Make sure you're careful who comes into your home, because I'm hearing stories about people saying, hey, I didn't go anywhere. I was at my house. But then you forgot about your friend or a family member from another household that came to your home. So, if you're someone that can afford it, if you can get a HEPA filter, hey, get one in your home. Or if you can get UV light in your HVAC system, that's your air conditioning ducts. Hey, that's great if you can afford that. But otherwise, be careful who comes to your home, wash hands, wear masks, wipe down surfaces. And one thing a lot of us noticed was that we have a decrease in flu.
Yes.
This year.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, what's up with that?
Hand washing, wearing masks, decreased social distancing. These viruses, they thrive with respiratory droplets, and then, we cough and then we touch things and all that. They survive on that. So the more that we're protecting ourselves from COVID-19, we're protecting ourselves from influenza.
From other viruses. Okay.
Yes. And in addition, people are starting to see how important it is to get the flu vaccine. So now I've actually had patients who didn't get it last year. I was like, oh, I'm gonna get the flu vaccine. I'm like, really? Like, yeah, I'm gonna get it, which is good because, and it's okay because, oh, it's okay.
I've never had the flu vaccine.
Oh, that's fine.
I've never had the flu. I'm not saying that those two go together, but it was just something that because I'd never received one, I never thought to even start. And so, I do have intentions and plans on definitely getting the COVID vaccine when it is my time.
Okay.
I feel like that one I'm not gonna play around with.
Yeah.
And not even try to see what it's like to get it and whatever. But yeah, I mean, I'm one of those people who never had the flu vaccine. So to even talk about a COVID-19 vaccine, I'm like, no.
Yeah.
So
well,
yeah.
It's interesting though. A lot of the scientists, immunologists, virologists, the thinking was that, wow, what we're going to do in the fall when it's flu time and COVID-19. So the biggest concern was there going to be a big time co-infection where doctors in the hospital, nurses were fighting two viruses, but then we found, again, protecting ourselves from COVID-19 protects us from influenza. So those cases have dropped. I think there are 1,500 to date from what the Centers of Disease Control state versus 50,000 at about this time last year.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's a dramatic drop. So many of us in the public health sector are elated that the flu vaccine has actually gone down. And again, some people think to one of those myths, oh, the COVID-19 virus is the flu virus. Like, no, it's two different viruses do two different things and stuff like that. So, so the flu the flu virus is still there. Influenza virus is just, we've done a great job of capping it.
That's great. Yeah. And so, speaking, you were talking about hospitals. So, I've read, and there have been reports, and sometimes people will use this in their argument when they
Oh,
talk
wow.
about the numbers of people who are dying of COVID. So there is this narrative that hospitals receive extra funding for patients who
Hmm.
have COVID-19. So then, therefore, they are either you know I'm not going to say that they are, but maybe misrepresenting the numbers,
Right.
or if a person does have COVID-19, but they came in for something, say for instance, like a heart attack, and they died of a heart attack, that they're listing it as COVID. And so, can you kind of clear up what that is and what it isn't, and what does it mean when a person has a heart attack but also had COVID? What did they die of?
Right. Absolutely. So to answer your question, your initial question, so whenever we had this COVID-19 virus become just spread like wildfire,
Hmm.
obviously stay at home orders, people being at home. So if you're staying at home or if you're getting sick, then you can't work. And if you can't work, it affects the other businesses. So the businesses lose their worker, and then you're dealing with customers, consumers. They're not coming to your business. So what ends up happening, as you're aware, that businesses end up having to lay off more people, and if they can't bring in more productivity, they end up shutting down. So United States of America, Health and Human Services, they made a conscious decision to give payments to hospitals, but also physicians offices who are actually in the fight against COVID-19. So what I tell people is that these additional payments are basically their stimulus
Hmm.
to keep their operations open, but also to make sure that they have enough funding to make sure that they keep staff on board, enough funding to get the supplies needed to fight COVID-19.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of fudging the numbers, that's something I've heard. Um, I don't know if it's hearsay or not, but what hospital administrators and what the public health departments, Department of Health and Human Services are doing is encouraging individuals to document appropriately. If someone comes in with symptoms of COVID, but the test is negative, sometimes you get false negatives, then
Hmm.
if it looks like COVID, it behaves like COVID on X-rays and lab, then it's likely COVID. And then there are a lot of cases where people initially had a test negative, came up positive. So,
Hmm.
so physicians, when we're in a hospital, we got to make that decision as well. Also, when patients come in and hey, they look fine, they just have a little nasal discharge, where their test comes up positive. So we're looking at them like, you really have COVID, but your test is positive. So
Yeah.
you end up documenting that. And we're finding out there are different strains of COVID-19. There's
Hmm.
some that are a little bit more dangerous than others. So what we're hoping is that individuals are documented appropriately in the hospitals, and then making sure that they're doing our best to take care of patients.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, as I mentioned, so if a person comes in with like a heart attack,
Yeah,
and dies of a heart attack, or I guess complications from a heart attack, I'm not
right,
sure how you would phrase that, but also had COVID-19, what would they
right.
list? Would they list it as a death of COVID, or?
That's a great question. Well, we actually had this question on one of the Facebook blogs about how to appropriately document a death certificate. So when someone dies, typically 9 times out of 10, 99.9%, I would just go ahead and say 100% of the time someone dies is from cardiopulmonary arrest.
Mm.
Or cardiac pulmonary arrest, whether if it's, you lose your air to your airway, your heart eventually stops. If you have a heart attack, your heart eventually stops at some point. So when someone dies, you put cardiac arrest or cardiopulmonary arrest, and then you put the causes. So if someone had a cardiopulmonary arrest, you would put heart attack, but if they also had comorbid or other disease processes involved, then you could put those other disease processes. Now, they are saying that COVID-19, they actually have seen patients, totally healthy patients, coming up with COVID-19 and they're having heart attacks. Well, apparently, COVID-19, when you get this virus, it causes you to coagulate, that is, make your blood thicker. So if you're someone who has COVID-19 and your blood is getting thicker, then you're at risk for a heart attack, you're at risk for a
Mm.
stroke, you're at risk for a blood clot in the lungs, and you're at risk of dying. So in these particular cases, yes, I think documenting COVID-19 as being a comorbidity is appropriate.
Yeah, no, that's good information.
Yeah.
Because like I said, we've heard things that that a person can pass away from a heart attack, but not understanding the science. I think it all comes down to science and
It
understanding
does.
how the virus affects the body, and even though you may have had an underlying condition and that's it, but did COVID make it worse? Or and things like that. So technically, I could see how they could,
Yeah.
will classify it as a COVID death.
Well, believe it or not, before COVID-19, when say we'll have a 70-year-old coming into the emergency room and they have the flu, and then the flu makes their body sicker, and then they end up having a heart attack and dying.
Hmm.
Well, a lot of times when we see this all the time in internal medicine, patients coming in, and you can get a heart attack because of the overall state of the situation. I mean, if your
Yeah.
body's stressed, it's under demand, you're not getting enough oxygen to your cells, you can get sick and have a heart attack or even a stroke and all that. So it's not uncommon for a virus to be listed as a cause of death in a heart attack or a stroke or respiratory arrest where where your lungs stop, you stop breathing with your lungs. So for a lot of people, again, being outside of medicine, outside of the science, it's
Hmm.
something that sounds foreign, but in medicine, we see it all the time. So,
Yeah.
again, listing a COVID-19 as a participant in someone's death is totally appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah. I learned a lot of that off of Grey's Anatomy, by the way.
Did you?
Yeah.
That's an interesting show. I refused to watch it when I was doing in training because I would come home and just like say, "Oh my God, why am I looking at this? I just came from that."
Right.
So
It'd be funny though. I would wonder what doctors, or like you said, you would come home and you'll watch it. I wonder if you would just sit there and be like, that would never happen in a hospital.
yeah,
Like
well,
that's not
yeah,
real.
that's an interesting show because they would do stuff, and I'm like, surgeons don't do that. That's an internal medicine thing, or the cardiologist will come and do this.
Sure.
So
Sure.
it's a super surgical based program, and then thus weren't surgeons. We're internists. We're like,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. That's not how that goes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's interesting. So yeah, so I got my MD from Grey's Anatomy.
Oh,
So
nothing wrong with
yeah,
that.
All right, shifting gears a little bit because I'm not going to keep you because I know you're very, very busy.
Sure.
So you most recently ran for office. So
Yes,
what made you run for office? Have you always been interested in public service? Tell us a little bit about that.
absolutely. So for myself, public service, I actually was exposed to it when I was younger. I actually did a program when I was a junior in high school, and with this, it's called Girl State, Boy State, and Girl State had their
Okay.
side. There you go.
Yeah.
Boy State, we had our side. So we went to the state capitol. We learned about uh, county and also parish.
Did you run for office there?
I did, and actually won.
What did you win?
I won a state rep position.
Oh my goodness, I was attorney general.
Were you? Oh, that's tight. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yep,
Oh, I love it. That
I
that
know.
program, those programs are
Amazing.
great, and they're sponsored by American Legion, and they are veterans. And even for myself, I come from a family of vets. My grandfather was in the Army, Master Drill Sergeant. My father was in the Navy. So also I did public service as a public health doctor with the National Health Service Corps. So,
Okay.
you read in my bio that I realized that, being an advocate for your community while working for your patients and doing well, it can be an opportunity for representation. So
Absolutely.
I even did had an opportunity to work as a congressional intern with Congressman Jim Cooper in Nashville, Tennessee, and actually that particular internship actually told me, I said, you know what, I can do this,
Yeah. Yeah.
but not just do it for me, because some people get into politics or they get these positions, whether it's with an organization or anywhere, and they use it to kind of build up their own ego. Well, I
Sure.
looked at it as an opportunity to take care of people.
Hmm.
Very similar to as a physician, you're taking care of patients in the hospital, taking care of patients in the exam room. So I looked at it as an opportunity to go beyond the hospital walls, beyond the exam room, to actually
Sure.
take care of patients or take care of individuals and groups of people on a global basis. So I would say experience in high school, experiences in medical school, and then looking back and my own family history and our history of public service inspired me to run for public office.
And so tell us a little bit about that experience. What was that like for you?
Interesting. Man, it's like everyone, even myself, when you're an outsider looking in,
Hmm.
I would like to think that I have some experience with politics, working as a congressional intern,
Sure.
even in government. I've done some work at the Centers for Disease Control, worked for the government. I've even did some work for the state of Tennessee. So I'm telling myself, okay, I've done some government work.
Yeah,
So
I'm aware.
it's not that bad. It's not that
Yeah.
bad. Well, it's not that part. It's the part of dealing with outside forces. So you're dealing with a political party, you're dealing with the
Hmm.
party you're with, you're dealing with the opposing party, you're dealing with independents, you're dealing with people who call themselves political pundits, but they've never run for office. They have never run a campaign. So you're dealing with a lot of forces on the outside. And then you also have to kind of deal with the workload, the burden. So, as you're aware, I'm a doctor, so I have my own practice. So I have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Then you're
Yeah.
dealing with a lot of the mandates when you're running for office because the state actually has mandates that you have to report, financial dealings and whatnot. So, and then in my particular case, I was running for office. Come to find out, I ended up having an opponent for the primary who just came out of nowhere.
Wow.
So I was like, wow, man. I said, what is going on here? And then COVID hit, so couldn't fundraise. And the person I had being my consultant, he took off on me. So I was like,
Oh,
man, I said, this is an interesting experience. So
did you? So
educational
did.
background, went to med school, did all this stuff. So I
Yeah.
just put on my pants, pulled them up, and I said, let's go to
Okay.
work.
Oh
So I
wow. So
mean,
you didn't fold at that point in time. You didn't say,
went to work, and I
all
mean,
right,
literally,
all
I
right.
was my own consultant.
Yeah.
I actually had a family member in Louisiana who's the parish president, so I would consult with him. I
Yeah.
would do research. I would actually do some trainings with the Democratic Party. I actually used a lot of my experiences from my MBA program as far as analyzing data, as far as leading, putting
Oh
together
wow.
a team, marketing, and also public speaking as well.
Sure.
So my educational background, and some people don't agree, but your education does matter. If you're someone that is used
Absolutely.
to staying up at 12 o'clock at night, reading or seeing patients, or if you're used to doing graduate school work, you're used to doing presentations in front of your professors, it becomes like that. And
Yeah.
then even doing interviews and speaking to constituent, it becomes that. So all of that hard work that you had been doing your whole life has prepared you for this moment.
For this
So for
moment.
me, having the opportunity to run as a candidate, but also the opportunity to be my own strategist, consultant, and manager, that's an experience that many political candidates don't get.
Yeah.
So able to see things from the outside and on the inside and also behind the scenes is a super experience. And then even though we came up short, we gave an incumbent, a 17-year incumbent
Wow.
who had literally probably his stiffest competition in over 15 years. I mean, we pushed this guy to the brink. And even though we came up at a little short at 47.2%, and he was 52.8%. We only lost by 1,808 raw votes. Now, if you flip that around to 905, if you take that 1,808 votes and flip it to 905 votes, we win or we go into a runoff, one of the
That's
two.
right.
So to do that as a political newcomer on the state level is tremendous. And
Absolutely.
honestly, I had 15,108 people vote for me. That's huge in a district that has traditionally been conservative and Republican. That is huge.
That is huge.
So the Republican Party was very afraid. And I tell people all the time, when you get a smear ad or an attack ad generated against you,
You
you've
know you're
hit the
doing
big time.
something.
And I've actually, people were texting me and said, hey, man, I saw you on Hulu. I said, huh? They were like, yeah, the Republican Party said don't vote for you because you're a liberal. I said, really? Or
You made it to
Cartoon
Hulu.
Network. Yeah, or Cartoon Network or one of these TV stations, Fox News, whatever.
Yeah.
They were at the Republican Party of Georgia ran these ads against me.
Wow.
And I was like, wow. Then I didn't get upset because I said, hey,
That's right.
that's what happens during battle and war, but it means that you're a legitimate threat. So what I tell people is that you take the experience, you learn from it, and then you use that to springboard you for the next election. And then people will know you, and then they'll say, okay, I remember that guy. Well, I didn't vote for him the last time, but you know what? He's starting to grow on me. I think I'll vote for him this time around.
I like that. I love how you tied all of your experience in medicine and school, life experience to how it helped you in this particular experience in your life. That's one thing I'm a big believer in is that all of our experiences are tied together. You know,
Yes.
everything that you're doing in your life is not for just that one moment. You know, that's a
Yeah.
very short sighted way to look at things, right? Is to
Yes.
think, okay, well, how is this paying off for me right now? You may not see the fruits of your labor right now. You may
That's
not
right.
see what, staying up at night and doing these term papers or doing these presentations or even just doing stuff that just doesn't make sense for you now. You don't know what that's going to do for you later and how it's
Yes.
going to prepare for you later. And so to hear you talk about how you took all those experiences and had the foresight to take all those experiences and put it
Hmm.
together to help you with this campaign, I think that is amazing. And that is what we should be doing, right? That is what we
Yes.
should be doing with our experiences. I always say that none of our experiences are for vain. They're either to make us better, smarter, more aware, enlightened, and conscious, or it's to help someone else.
That's
But
right.
but it's all in how you choose to look at your experiences and the things. So I hear you say that you might not be done with your political career.
Might not be done. Matter of fact, I'm not done. I'm
Okay, all
gonna,
right.
again, I'm gonna run again, and I'm looking at some things, and I think the opportunity is right to run again for Georgia House District 49. And I mean, we did some great things, but also there's some things we had to learn from. So those things that we learned from, I have them written down. Don't want to consider it a weakness, but consider it as a learning experience. And then we're
Absolutely.
gonna make sure that we focus on that while keeping what we did strong. So we'll go ahead and flip that seat and get it over, so we can get myself in House District 49 at the state capitol, so we can make some good decisions for some good people.
I love that. I love that. And y'all are over there flipping some stuff in Georgia.
Oh
So
yeah,
go ahead
look,
and do
Stacey
it.
Abrams.
That's right. Shout out to Stacey Abrams.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much. This was an amazing, amazing conversation
Oh,
interview.
but
I
thank
am
you.
so thankful that you had the time and you accepted my invitation. Tell,
Yes.
tell my listeners and viewers a little bit, well, not a little bit, but tell them how they can find out more information about you and if they want to know about your upcoming
Yeah,
political moves and just more about your practice as well.
absolutely. So in terms of the practice, you can go to the company website, www.personalconciergemd.com. And also, if you want to become a patient, whether if you're in the Atlanta area, Georgia, actually I have licenses in a couple other states too, and we do telemedicine. You can dial 678-395-7046. And just like me and other people, social media is huge. So for the
Yep.
practice, it's at Personal Concierge MD, and that's our Instagram handle. Also, if you want to learn more about my political career, you can go to at Jason for Georgia, and that's on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was
Thank
amazing.
you.
Can't wait to talk to you again when you're on the campaign trail.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's believe it or not, that's coming up. And always say that we have a break in between the cycles, and I'm starting to learn that there is no break.
Right. You're always working, maybe
You're always
whether it's
working.
a lot or a little, you're always working.
That's right. You're always working. And
Awesome.
hey, Miss Carmen, I appreciate you allowing me to come on this show. It's a great opportunity to speak with you and also your podcast listeners.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Talk
Thank
to you
you.
soon.
Bye bye.